So this was really interesting to see this morning that Nintendo put out some information about the worldwide sales of the Nintendo Switch 2, then pulled them almost as fast as they put them up. Either they were not supposed to reveal it yet at this point, or maybe it was based off of projections. We don't really know, but we're going to go off of the first bit of information that we have, and then we'll kind of see what's happening. But if you've been looking at what's been happening with the actual Nintendo Switch 2 sales as they get into stores and more people buy them, I definitely think that the Nintendo Switch 2 sales are around what Nintendo put out this morning. So let's go ahead and jump right into that. Shout outs to my man Stealth. He talked about it on Twitter, and he stated that Nintendo Switch 2 has sold 5 million units in 26 days. Nintendo accidentally leaked this information. In the Americas, 1.8 million. In Japan, 1.47 million. In Europe, 1.18 million. And in other regions, 550,000 units. The Nintendo Switch 2 is the fastest selling system ever after 1 month. Now, once again, Stealth also puts in the update that I talked about where there's some question whether Nintendo actually posted the sales or a projection of these sales, but of course we don't really know. Nintendo put out that information and then pulled it. Maybe there was a miscommunication on the web developer end on when you put that information up. The numbers here seem pretty likely to be lining up with what's actually selling, so I would guess that these numbers, whether it was a projection or it's the actual numbers, is fairly accurate, because in Japan it's got the 1.47 million. That's right around what we've been seeing with the Famitsu sales when it comes to the extra units after the 1 million plus launch in Japan. It lines up so perfectly, so I don't think it's a projection. I think it's the actual sales, but once again, it could be Nintendo really predicting things since they know how much stock is going out each week and everything. They could be really lining up those projections with the amount of stock that they have, so we're gonna have to wait on that. But I will say this, the Nintendo Switch 2 system is selling incredible. I put out a video talking about how the sales are very important, and the reason why the sales are very important is because it helps get more content on the platform. Developers want to see that there is a healthy, vibrant base of people consistently buying the Nintendo Switch 2, and when you have that, you're going to have more developers that actually want to develop on the system. You're going to have more developers that want to support the system and not just put games on the system, but actually take their time and effort to get it on par with other systems. Look at how long it took to get certain games on the Nintendo Switch 1 because developers were not confident in these sales, at least at the beginning overall. But now with the Nintendo Switch 2, because of the massive sales success of the Switch 1, developers felt way more confident putting their games on the system and greenlighting development of multiple millions of dollars to the Switch 2 system, which I think we're going to see a huge explosion in the amount of games coming to the system in year 2 and in year 3, and I mean calendar year overall. So next year, in addition to the following year, expect there to be a slew, a wide range of announcements at Nintendo Directs and just randomly, which we will get into when it comes to different new game announcements for the Switch 2. Pretty interesting game that's coming out that was announced recently. But yeah, this is definitely a good thing overall if you are on the Nintendo Switch 2 platform or looking to get into it. Nintendo has secured, obviously, there's going to be more funding coming in, and they're going to throw the kitchen sink at the system to make sure that it's successful. We got Donkey Kong Bananza this month. The previews for that have been glowing. We're going to talk more about that game. So this is what the momentum is all about, and this is what you want to see with the sales numbers. And yeah, that's pretty much faster than every other system. People were saying that this could be a Wii U situation. Clearly, it's not going to be a Wii U situation. I do think that it's going to line up somewhere within the 90 million to 100 million units plus range at this point, because what you're looking at is that you're looking at the momentum of any system. Usually when it starts out this hot, it's hard for it not to be some type of big success. We were talking about this the other day when it comes to the sales, and I don't think there's ever been a system, at least in Nintendo's history, that started off hot and hasn't end up being a 100 million seller, or hasn't end up being at least like a massive or big seller. Like Nintendo usually sometimes starts off a little bit slower, like the Nintendo 3DS, and then things kind of turn around afterwards. but there hasn't really been a time where Nintendo has a system that starts off like this and doesn't end up selling huge amounts of units. So I do think that it's going to ultimately end up being pretty good overall, and that's going to lead to a lot more games for us to play. But before we get into a big announcement about the Switch 2, please make sure you hit that subscribe button if you are someone new, click that notification bell, and hit that like button, and let me know what you think about the Nintendo Switch 2 sales so far. Okay, let's get into this announcement that I was talking about. It's a very interesting and weird type of game. D3 publisher and developer Yuke's have announced action shooter Full Metal Schoolgirl for the PS5, Switch 2, and PC via Steam, Epic Game Store. It will launch on October 23rd worldwide. You've got digital pre-orders are available now for the PlayStation 5 in both standard and deluxe editions. But let's check out what this game is actually about. So, destroy an exploitive enterprise while being live streamed. In the year 2089, the United Federation of Japan is an industrial powerhouse while also being one of the world's leading countries in overtime work. In this sickening future, the economy is booming and working 24 hours a day is considered virtuous. The core of the country's industry, economy, and social system are controlled by a single giant corporation. The rampage of a fully mechanized schoolgirl, a fully armed cyborg heroine, storms into a giant corporation and unleashes a relentless barrage of gunfire and swords action in an exhilarating cyborg schoolgirl action adventure. The feeling of immortality is irresistible when you break into an office and wreak havoc. So here are the key features in the game. A story of revenge against a giant explorative enterprise. The enemy is the world's largest corporation, Maternal Jobs. The cyborg corporate slaves known as the Working Dead, who relentlessly fight as corporate warriors even to their death, block your path. They will attack you in droves, relying on their numbers, show no mercy, scrap them all. Close quarters combat in an ever-changing building. The battlefield is a 100-story skyscraper. The evil CEO awaits at the top floor. Each floor changes its structure every time you enter, and there is also a trap-like security system. Own the battlefield on each floor to reach the top. Live streamed battles, use donations for upgrades, use materials and rewards obtained from defeating enemies to upgrade and customize your machine girl, the equipment and enhancement programs obtained from the item box, deployment modifications, include over 100 basic elements. Utilize these to face the challenge over and over again. Even if you feel powerless, remember that you are not alone. The viewers of your live stream are cheering you on. As the number of viewers increases, so does the support. Fund your upgrades with the donations that you receive. Very interesting overall when it comes to this style of game. And I wouldn't expect this type of game when it comes down to what's going on here, like with live streaming and all that. It just seems pretty wild. And honestly, the graphics look pretty good when it comes to what they're doing here. It looks like it's going to be an explosive game, very different and weird type of game, especially if you like the rogue style type and everything like that, like Enter the Gungeon, things like that. I think that this game's definitely going to be for you. But overall, it looks like there's a lot of customization and a lot of different options and replay value that the game's going to have, and it's going to be $50 too, so it doesn't seem bad. But we'll see once the game actually comes out how it plays and what the reviews are and everything. But definitely good to get more AA style of announcements and just more game announcements for the Switch 2 just in general. So what do you guys think about Full Metal Schoolgirl for the PS5, Switch 2, and PC? Let me know in the comment section. But now we're going to move on to some big information and new previews for Donkey Kong Bananza. Now, I'm not watching too much of these previews because I don't want spoilers. I don't want to spoil the game at all. I am ready. I am sold. I just want to play the game at this point. We're in July. The game is coming out in a couple of weeks now, man. So I am just ready to get into Donkey Kong Bananza. But we do have some information on who's developing the game. We now know, confirmed, we all kind of suspected it, that it's going to be the Super Mario Odyssey team. Apparently, it's the same team that developed Super Mario Odyssey that is making this game. So that's something that you kind of could tell when Donkey Kong Bananza was first revealed. I was saying, Super Mario Odyssey 2 or Mario Odyssey. I was thinking it's like a Mario game because it looked kind of like Super Mario Odyssey in terms of the graphical style and just like how it looked. So I was thinking, maybe the same engine or something, but it ended up being Donkey Kong Bananza overall. But that incredible direct that was focused on Donkey Kong Bananza really sold so many more people on this. And get this, it looks like there's even going to be more improvements for the final build. Shout out to my man Stealth on Twitter. He stated that according to Nintendo Life preview of Donkey Kong Bananza, the build journalist slash influence played isn't the finalized version of the game. The minor technical issues mentioned might be even fewer in the final release. So if you go out and if you play like the demo that's out there in like the demo kiosk or anything, or even what some people played beforehand, there were some minor technical issues in terms of like the frame rate hitching a little bit here and there, but ultimately it plays super smooth. From what we've seen, from what people have played, it plays smooth. It's not like there's a major problem, but there were a few things here and there, but it looks like the final build could fix a lot of that or be significantly reduced overall. I think it's also going to be interesting to see if you're playing on the Switch 2 screen itself with the VRR, if that's actually better than maybe if you're playing docked and it doesn't have that to smooth things out a little bit more on some of those. But what I'm expecting, or at least what I'm guessing, is that there's going to be sometimes a few hitches if there's a ton of stuff going on screen, but it's going to quickly adjust and make sure that it recovers right back to a smooth 60 FPS. But yeah, I'm looking forward to this a lot. I think that Nintendo, obviously, this is a massive game for them. There is a ton of hype and anticipation for this title. And if you look at what's happening right now on Amazon, I covered this in a previous video, the game is selling incredibly well. I think that this is going to be a huge release, and I cannot wait for it. So what do you guys think so far about Donkey Kong Bonanza? Some of the previews which have been glowing about the game. This could be a game of the year contender. This could get nominated. We've talked about this on my live stream where I've pretty much put it to where there's about maybe one spot left when it comes to the Keighley Awards overall. We're not talking about your own personal game of the year because I know it's going to be in my nominations for it. But yeah, there's about one spot left for it, and maybe there's going to be one Nintendo game. So Metroid Prime 4 or this game, Donkey Kong Bonanza. So we'll see what happens with that. But yeah, I definitely think that Donkey Kong Bonanza can be a Game of the Year nominee for sure. And maybe for some, even a Game of the Year out there. So what do you guys think? Let me know in the comment section below. But now we're going to move on to a big announcement from 2K, because WWE 2K25 has been officially announced for this month. On July 23rd, 2025, WWE 2K25 is coming out. But the big news here with WWE is the fact that the game is going to be feature parity and on par with the other platforms. Quote, the Switch 2 version will include all the same game modes and match types as the other versions, and the game is a whopping 70 plus gigabytes, 73.2 to be exact. So that's pretty much in parity content wise and size wise with the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series versions. It's going to include the island microtransaction island that people are somewhat excited for if you're really into WWE or whatever, and it's going to have all of that. So in the past, we've seen the disaster of WWE 2K18, which actually plays better on the Nintendo Switch 2 now. It still has problems, but plays a lot better. So we've seen the disaster of that. They pretty much stopped making WWE games after that, but it looks like they're back and it's going to be pretty good. They have shown off a trailer which you guys are seeing, and it looks pretty clean overall. I'm not expecting it to be quite as good as the PS5 version when it comes to everything with graphics and all of that, but I think they've done a pretty good first effort here with the Nintendo Switch 2, making sure that in the first year you have a WWE 2K game. Now listen, I'm not big into WWE. I'm not big into the wrestling games at all, but I do understand how important it is to have this type of game, like to have the sports games, to have Madden, to have NBA 2K, to have WWE. People really buy and love these games, and it's some of the better selling games that are out there. There wasn't a lot of stuff out there when it comes to sports fans. WWE was in shambles, and it's definitely something that you would want on your platform more so than not wanting it overall, as it has a huge base of people who buy and play and like the game. So people are excited about that. Once again, I'm not the biggest WWE fan, but hey, I'm happy for those that are going to be picking up this game, and hopefully it's a good and competent version, which it does seem like it is. So what do you guys think about WWE 2K25 coming over to the Switch 2 on July 23rd? Let me know in the comment section. All right, we're moving on to the final topic here, guys, and we're going to discuss what SEGA had to say about Nintendo, because they did not believe in the Nintendo Switch 1. So here is what Suji Utsumi said about Nintendo. He is the CEO of SEGA of America and SEGA of Europe and the COO and president of SEGA Corporation. So he said this: "Since I was a member of the PlayStation launch team, I have a big attachment to the console business," he told us. And Nintendo had been playing an amazing role. Jesus, they made a great contribution to this area. I didn't expect Switch 1 to be that successful. Nobody did. But the big, huge trend is PC with its global market reach and mobile, and of course, which is getting better in terms of graphics. So yeah, the game business did this interview, and this makes complete sense considering a lot of other developers and publishers didn't think that the Nintendo Switch 1 was going to be super successful, and kind of what we saw with Sega's support on the Nintendo Switch 1. They kind of put out a few different games here and there, nothing really too important. They didn't really want to put out Yakuza or some of their bigger titles. They took a long time to get Persona on the system, so it kind of falls in line with what Sega was thinking. But with the Nintendo Switch 2, they're already off to a really hot start on the system with a lot of games right there at launch and more games coming. So they definitely learned their lesson from that when it comes to the Switch 1 to Switch 2. All right, guys, that wraps it up for this video here. Thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, click that notification bell, and check out my other Nintendo Switch 2 RPG news and more right here on screen. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you guys for the next one. Peace.